Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr. Hello and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. On this episode, we're going to be discussing early years environments, and we are welcoming back our special guest, Shellie Powell. So let's dive right on in. So, Shellie, how are you?
I am all good, thank you very much. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Very good, very good. So let's start off then, Shellie. What are environments? What does that mean in the world of early years?
The environment is everything, isn't it? It's about the physical space that we have. It's about sort of how we use that physical space, how we lay it out, the way that children can access resources, the way we arrange those resources, the way that we make sure that there are spaces that aren't next to each other. Like, you're not going to have a crazy construction area right next to somewhere children are supposed to be calm. But it's also about making sure the environment works for children that've got needs. It's bringing in those social aspects. It's bringing in the cultural aspects as well. It's about you as well. Like, the grown-up is the biggest part of the environment, isn't it? Without us, you can have the most beautiful setting with the most beautiful resources. You have a bad practitioner, there's no point having any of it.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, it's one thing that always comes to mind, and it may well for you as well, thinking of the environment, is how it's changed and how it looks now. And immediately when you think of environment, I often still think, rightly or wrongly, I still often think, oh, well, we need to make sure we've got the literacy area, the maths area, the home corner, maybe a woodwork area, you know, like you have your areas. Whereas now that isn't seen as much.
No.
So why is that, Shellie?
I think because a lot of pedagogy's changed now, hasn't it? It's not what we had, where it was like most settings would do like a strictly Montessori, strictly Steiner, strictly someone else. Froebel, thank you. I couldn't think of any others then. But it used to be strictly that, didn't it? And now it's not. Pedagogy is a lot more fluid. So they might do something that's child-centered. They might do something as adult. A lot of settings are trying out that curiosity approach now, aren't they? So which I love. I love curiosity, but curiosity is about being curious, and you can't be as curious if you've got set areas for set things.
I think there's also the element that when the EYFS first came out with their prime areas and specific areas, everyone sort of thought, right, we need to get all of these into a room. And yes, you do, but maybe not as separated areas. The way that you bring in maths, the way you bring in literacy can also come into play in your creative area, can also come into play in your role play area. So still seeing those things on the wall around those resources that are there means that you don't need to have a separate space. And also, like you said as well, thinking as the practitioner being a huge part of the environment, you've got how you're talking to the children, how you're asking those open-ended questions, and how you would bring maths in again. There may not need to be a sum on the table written there for children to see, but we've got 2 here and 2 there. What happens if we put them together? How many would we have? That's maths. That's, you know, it doesn't have to be how many, you know, even that, how many dresses have we got hung up on the role play area? Do we need 5 or do we need 6? You know, that's bringing in maths everywhere you are. And it's how you as an adult bring that in, opposed to having those areas, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And if you look now, well, I remember years ago, you'd have a book corner. It was just a book corner. You had nothing else in there. It was just books and puppets. But actually, those books need to be everywhere. So the children's learning of books and literacy doesn't just stop because they've walked out of a book corner. Going outside, having the literacy around, having the signs, the symbols, having books that they can take outside, clipboards that they can take outside. You're extending that environment from having your set areas. I used to love my set areas, I'm not going to lie. I'd have like, you know, remember the signs that you'd dangle from the ceiling? This is definitely the book corner.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Don't get me wrong, they have a place. There is a
Yes.
place for that. But I think now, like you say, instead of a book corner, we've got a cozy area, so it can be fluid.
Yeah, we're going more home from home now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, you're in a nursery room.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at people that are following Curiosity, like if you look at the Curiosity approach, Instagram or Facebook or website, or even just the books, the stuff that you can see in it, you'd never tell you were in a nursery. Like the little telephone table next to a chair that they're using in the cozy area. The books actually on a bookshelf like you would have in your house. And just like the role play clothes, we haven't got big princess dresses anymore. We've actually got shoes from different cultures. Basically anything you can pick up in a charity shop.
That's it.
Like,
that is what the Curiosity approach is, isn't it? It's those real life resources. And you know, everybody's got a story of a family member or someone they know where the little one's gone into the bedroom and put on mummy's heels or put on daddy's trainers and walked around the house in them. That's what children want. That's what they want to experience, those real, not the plastic Barbie shoes that fit, you know. Sure, they would get joy from them, but actually what are they learning from that? What are they gaining from it? And having that in real life environment around them.
Yeah, to be fair, like I love that. My child has always gone around in everything I own, every item of clothing that I have, she wears. Last night I found her in bed with my dressing gown, my reading glasses, and my Kindle, pretending to be me. She's 8. And it was hilarious. But yeah, being 8 years old, she's still doing that, and she's well out of the nursery stage now. So yeah, they need to have those little things so they can live out real life and make sense of real life, don't they?
How much do parents get to see the environments in the nursery? Obviously, in the initial show round, when they're choosing a nursery, they get to obviously have a look. But in terms of every day, week, month, when they're dropping off children, how often do they get to emulate that at home or know what to emulate?
So it's the big C word that has had a massive impact on that, and COVID had a huge impact on nurseries. And I mean, during COVID, I had a family member who was looking for a nursery for their child, and they had to look inside the windows. So they had to peer in the windows instead of having a show around. They just had to look in the windows of the nursery.
Wow.
They were not allowed in the building. And now, I mean, I've worked in nurseries where the parents would come in, we kind of pull them through into the room, be like, have a look at this, see what they're doing. Look, can you see them? Peep through to them in the garden and things like that. That is what I used to love with the parent partnership side of things as well. And they used to be able to come into the rooms. Post-COVID, a lot of settings still don't allow children into nurseries. It's starting to come back more, but most places are
Parents into nurseries.
What did I say?
Children.
Oh, yeah. No children allowed in this nursery. No. Sorry.
Could you imagine a parent nursery?
I think sometimes we need to.
How funny.
So nurseries aren't letting parents into the setting because they found it's less chaotic often for handovers. Some parents might have felt awkward kind of just standing at the door, or they did feel awkward going into the room even sometimes, so they kind of stand on the outskirts. Baby room, they'd have to take off shoes before they'd go in. So I think a lot of nurseries now keep parents at the door for pick up and drop off. There are a lot.
There may be an opportunity, especially if we've got learners listening. Part of developing as a learner is the community engagement and having open evenings or opportunities for parents to come in and grab ideas that they can then take home for that continuity of the environment. Especially if the nurseries are beginning to change those environments to be less kind of designated area style, prescriptive environments and having it more naturally occurring, it would be a nice opportunity to engage with parents and vice versa for them to the nursery to gain ideas from parents in especially different cultures, and what kind of decorative things do they have, what does that child see, or all sorts of things. Are there different altars or areas that they might engage in, especially if they have prayer at home and things like that? It could influence their environment in a slightly different way. So I just thought I'd ask the question. I didn't really
I think a lot has changed post-COVID. A lot of settings have gone back to how they were, in allowing parents to come back in as, in inverted commas, normal. But a lot of settings have found it's a lot less chaotic. And again, that's a question for parents. Again, personal experience from friends and family, a lot of parents don't like that. A lot of parents don't like sitting on the outside. And it's not because there are safeguarding concerns or anything like that, but because some of these parents, these children are here 5 days a week, 4 days a week. So actually it's quite nice for the parent to see that child in a safe, happy, enjoyable environment, just having a little play before they get there. And often children would be so engrossed in what they're doing, they don't actually know that one of their parents is stood at the door, so
there could be opportunities without the children as well. So if, for example, a parent was concerned if there's maybe attachment kind of issues or separation anxiety more than anything, and that they would disrupt the child, perhaps without children being there, in an evening or on a weekend or something, just like a little open event, just come and see what we do and where your child is learning to grow.
We used to do them frequently, so like probably every 1 or 2 to 3 months we would have open evenings, days, whatever it was. A lot of the time it was to get new parents in, if I'm totally honest with you.
Nothing wrong with that.
But
showcase what you're doing.
Exactly, but a lot of our parents would then turn up on that day, because we'd have, like, one of our biggest selling points was we always had Elsa there. Elsa always came to visit. Children loved it. So a lot of the time we'd have that, and the parents would get to come in. But like when we were changing our environments, we're looking back to for early to late 2000s, to be fair, like the whole way across, because I was in this setting the whole time. But when we were changing environments, we'd actually invite parents in. So we'd get the parents to actually come in and help us to change the environments, partly because we needed the lifting. But they would like come in and look at what we did, how we did it. And that was really nice, because they'd go, oh, actually, they really like doing this at home. Is there any way we can incorporate that? And we changed our environments regularly. We used to go every 6 to 12 weeks, depending on how they were, like how the children were using them. If they were having fun and not being destructive, because sometimes you can change an environment, move a shelf, and you've got a rat run, and they are up and down that because it is the best running place in the world. So that would get changed pretty quickly.
And equally that changes on depending on what cohort you have of children, doesn't it, as well? So you have, I've worked in nurseries where you have a very boy heavy year in a preschool room. So you make your construction area a lot larger, and those cozier corners kind of get a bit smaller, or your role play gets a bit smaller, and you make that construction space bigger rather than trying to fit 20 boys all into this teeny little corner. But being confident that it can change and it can move, and it is the point in it is to move.
And flexible.
Yeah.
Do you find that, this is a bit of a complete side tangent really, you're saying about the construction, do you find that boys and girls tend to gravitate towards things? There's that argument of nature versus nurture, isn't there, really? Do you find that's a thing in children?
Yeah, you do. You can get the girls. I was in a setting this morning, to be fair, and one of my learners did an activity on. She had 2 to 3 year olds, and had this lovely tough tray set up with loads of cars, and it was maths and it was sorting, and really, really nice. And it was quite a stereotypically boy heavy activity. The girls loved it. They gravitated to the cars, but just behind were some giant dinosaurs. So every boy, barring one that was involved in the activity, ignored her activity and went to the dinosaurs, and I was playing dinosaurs with them while I was observing. So yeah, I think you do get the stereotypes definitely, like both of my children have gone stereotypical without us doing it. I bought my son a pushchair and a dolly, and he did play with that, but he was much more into the Lego and the building, whereas my daughter had all the Lego and building from her brother, and gravitated to princess dresses and tiaras and dress up and dollies and all of that kind of stuff. So even without us pushing, they definitely gravitated to those stereotypical activities.
Fascinating, isn't it? And it's about giving them the opportunity to decide for themselves, as you did, you know, gave them both options and then see which they kind of prefer and how that changes over time. That's for me, like the magic of environments, really. It's not just providing things for them to do, it's things for them to learn and discover about themselves more than anything.
So again, this is kind of looking at our theorists that sit behind environments and things like that as well. That is what curiosity approach is. It is just there for the children to be curious with anything and everything, but also not using fantastic plastic. So everything's all very natural wooden materials as well. And I think that's also the same with a Reggio setting. A Reggio setting is all based around their imagination. The child's it's child-centered. They have a lot, or again, everything is open-ended. So you wouldn't even, the curiosity approach would have more, for example, in the role play area, shoes, outfits, although not prescribed outfits, but it would be kind of scarves, jackets, things like that. Whereas in a Reggio setting, you wouldn't have that. It would literally just be a scarf or material, pieces of material that would be as their dress up. So really, really exploring that imagination for children. Reggio is kind of one step further than that curiosity approach. And then everything is very outdoors environment, which we haven't sort of touched on yet, but that's a whole big topic too, but we will get there. It's that sort of that outdoors coming indoors as well. So using for example, using like rosemary sprigs to use as paintbrushes or things like that. Even, you know, it's kind of just using different tools, just a stick to do painting with in arts and crafts. Even it, you know, yes, every Reggio setting has an atelier, but actually within that they are encouraged to bring those outside tools as well.
Yeah, they should just be an extension of both, shouldn't they? Indoors is extension of out, and out is an extension of in. We used to love a bit of pine needles. Pine needles are great for a paintbrush.
I think everything when it comes to the environment is so changeable, so adaptable, so malleable for the children you've got, the environment you've got, the outside space, the indoor space, but it's what you're bringing, what that environment is supporting their children with. So with your pedagogy, with your curriculum, you need to be deciding on how am I producing these outcomes for the children, and what do I want my outcomes to be? So for example, with the curiosity approach, you want your children to be curious, you want them to find out these things independently, as is with sort of the Reggio. Whereas sort of maybe the Montessori has a little bit more adult-led element to it as well. So it's finding out your pedagogy. And there isn't, and again, a lot of settings you go into, in some settings you walk in and go, you are curiosity through and through, or you are Froebel through and through. But some settings you go, you've got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you've got a little bit here, which I also think is a really lovely way to have it, you know, make it work for your group of children, your cohort of children, make it work for your area that you live in as well, and kind of your socioeconomic area that you are living in as well, but can be completely changeable.
I must admit, like looking at the social sort of groups and that side, when I worked in London as a manager and then obviously as a tutor, but working with nurseries in London, so many Montessori there. And I was because Montessori was not something I'd ever experienced myself, so I was fascinated in it. And I remember walking in and looking at this environment, and it was so planned. Everything was planned. It was all very clean as well and tidy, which is working in your average setting. They try and keep it as clean and tidy as possible, but children happen.
Yeah.
And also adults happen as well. We're not the cleanest either in early years. But I remember sort of walking into my first Montessori nursery and just looking at it going, how do they do this? Because everything was set beautifully, and they hadn't done it for me. This was just the way the day was working, and the children would take their own resources, take them to the table, sit down, do the learning that they were doing, finish it up and put it back. This was in this particular setting, and like over where I worked, so I like the Wimbledon, the higher social class areas, loads of Montessori nurseries. And then when I moved coastal, I genuinely don't think there are anywhere near as many Montessoris around here. I can think of one Montessori that I know of in my area personally. Other than that, they're not there. I think there's a big calling for it, London based, but also Montessori was born in Italy, wasn't it? So is it because there are, the area that I lived in were a lot of Italian parents, so did a lot of them want that, and that's where the calling was from.
Do you think, does it relate to cultural capital, the environment?
Yeah, of course it does.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you walk into nurseries so I've worked a lot in Surrey areas and Surrey, Hampshire, Surrey border. You walk into these nurseries, and in their role play corner they have a coffee espresso machine.
That's horrible.
What 2, 3, 4-year-old would know what a coffee espresso machine is? With a lever, and when you go, oh okay, and it does, it has a massive impact on it. And I think also it has a huge impact on your outdoor environment. You look at some of our nurseries in Portsmouth that are city centre nurseries, and probably for you, Shellie, as well, having worked in London, the garden space is appalling. Absolutely tiny. Shocking. And I actually went to a talk a few years ago. It was great. It was a chap he was all about risky play, which again is very me. I am all one for
risky play.
Yeah, go and find out what happens when you do that. But he was talking about the outdoor environment, and he said in England chickens have more right to outside space than children.
Gosh,
how shocking is that?
Crazy.
And for me, I sit there and I go, why are these children not being given the outside space? Why are they being given a small? I've had a setting I've worked with before who have a smaller outdoor environment than they do their two indoor rooms. And it's kind of just that. How is that okay? How is that what we are providing children with? How are we supporting these children to grow in an environment, but not giving them an appropriate environment when we're talking outdoors? And again, that's kind of the thing for me. Here's Hampshire Surrey border. We're very leafy green. We have got a lot of outside space. A lot of our nurseries have got huge outdoor spaces. If they haven't got it, they often go off and go to forest school in a minibus or something like that. There is that availability to do that local enough to them. However, those lower socioeconomic groups don't have that available in their area.
No, I had a nursery in Harrow that I dealt with once as a tutor, not when I worked in myself. They didn't have a garden at all. They had no outdoor space whatsoever. Obviously, part of the EYFS is they have to have access to outdoor areas. They lived in a pretty dodgy part as well. I remember at 10 o'clock in the morning, I got there one day, got out my car, walked towards the nursery, and there was a man very drunk on a bench and like slurring, but then started saying stuff to me, and I'm trying to walk to this nursery going, oh my goodness. And we had an outdoor observation planned with my learner at this point, because you, regardless of whether you got an outdoor area, we've got to do an outdoor activity. So we went on this walk, and I had to warn them about the people that were out at 10 o'clock in the morning while they were walking around. But they didn't have, being in the middle of Harrow, they didn't really have any areas or forest schools or anything. But then in contrast, my demographic was huge at my last place. Like I was London one day, Winchester the next. I was over in somewhere else the next. It's crazy. One of my settings was in the middle of Winchester, and it was based in an equine centre inside the college. So the children had rolling fields and horses to play with and stuff like that. And their environment outside was something else. I've never seen anything like it. They had orchards. So the children grew their own food in an actual full orchard. The farmer that lived next door used to give them tractor tires and big planks and crates and all the stuff basically from his farm that he didn't need anymore. And that was the children's construction outside. So their outside environment was something else. And they were all very secure. So they had acres. The sister setting they had, I can't remember how many acres, but a ridiculous amount. I remember sitting in the back of the garden once, and they hadn't mowed the grass, and you couldn't see children. All of a sudden you'd see his head bob up. But they had the best time. There was one time during the summer they dug a hole in the middle of one of the outdoor areas, filled it with a tarp, filled it with water, and made a paddling pool for the summer.
Yay.
It was just amazing. And like I've come from, my management background was London. It was like pretty much a terrace house we were in. So it was very small garden. And we had the climbing frames out there. We had some like shelter. We had bikes. Didn't really have much else because we didn't have the space for much else. But they were using it nicely. They were playing, they were laughing, they were talking to each other. No screaming, no chaotic children.
Talking of different resources, and you had sort of the bikes and the outdoor space, I think, again, looking back at our theorists, this is where they come into their own as well, because I think a lot of the theorists that we've spoken about, Curiosity, Froebel, Reggio, you don't have to have resources. I think that's the point, isn't it? You know, it's you don't have to find that, you don't have to have a shed in the back garden to try and fit everything back in, or someone has to go and tidy up the garden or things like that, because everything is very natural and very open-ended resources. You don't need to have that, oh wait, have we got space to put that in, has someone tidied up the shed this week, you know, all those kind of things. It's okay for those brushes to be left outside and kind of just almost go back to nature. If we are talking about sticks, brushes, things like that we can use for painting, decorating, those sorts of things that you would do with the children, they can just kind of go back to nature. And I think that's a really nice thing to have as well.
The forest school environment, that's I worked at a packaway setting. So talking about environments, with the packaway setting, you didn't really have an environment. You shared it with the scouts and the WI and everyone else that used that scout hut. So we'd have to go in, it was a 9 till 3, we were in at 8 to make sure we could set up, and we set it up how we could because we weren't allowed to hang anything on the walls and everything was movable. So we'd set up environments as much as we could to meet the needs. And the good thing with that is you can change the environment every single day. You can change it to the needs of the children. But you've also got to pack it up at the end of the day. We had the tiniest garden, which had your stereotypical resources in. But then we were on this edge of a forest. So we were classed as a forest school because every day we went into the forest and we had areas out there that we could sit and do like forest story time. We planted, because it was an ancient forest, and they had, I can't remember what the people were, but basically people that kept the forest. But our children, when trees were felled or anything like that, they were the ones to plant the oak seeds. So we grew some of the trees that were growing there, and then on the boundaries that again there were fields with horses and stuff like that. And this is 20 minutes away from Portsmouth. So still city centre-y-ish, but far enough that there are forests and the beach and all that close by, and we utilise that as our environment rather than the scout hut and the tiny garden that we had.
One thing you were saying then, Shellie, that made me have a question as well for you is your pick up put down nursery. So kind of your pick up pack away nursery.
Yeah.
They are obviously still around. I think they're becoming less common, but they are still around. What would you say? Is there a difference in them if people are looking at kind of working in them or sending children there, is there any difference in those pick up, put away nurseries, or do you think they still have an equal quality of childcare and environment?
Weird. Well, it's a bit of both, really. A lot of our parents were very involved. So we weren't charity run. I'm trying to think, it was quite a few years ago now. We weren't charity run or anything like that. It was a lady that owned it. But because we were in the middle of a village and in the middle of a parish, the parents had slight ownership over what we did, which meant the parent, obviously this is pre-COVID, so parents, when they picked up, we'd let them in, they'd come in. It might be that they spend 20 minutes in the centre before they go home. But it was because we were also just a preschool, we were 9 till 3. It tended to be mums who weren't working because obviously they didn't need the full-time childcare. So we had a lot of parents that would come in and use it as a social time, but then we also had other classes that run off of it. So we had a tots class and we had a mums class and things like that ran from, like, we had the main hall and then there was a side building, so we had other little classes that went on there. So I feel like it was a little bit more personable, if I'm totally honest with you. And like, if we hadn't set up early enough in the morning, say if something had happened or one of us was running late or whatever it might be, a parent would turn up in the morning and help us set up. So before dropping their child off, they'd help us set up and finish off.
That's nice.
It was really nice. But yeah, I've worked in big chains, I've worked in independent nurseries, obviously the pack away as well. And I definitely think there was much more of a community feel in that setting than there had been in any other one that I've been in the whole of my career, definitely.
I like that.
Yeah, it was really, really nice.
But the thing is I love a Reggio setting. Like, I love Reggio, and that is a massive part of the Reggio way, as it were, is that sense of community, children going out and kind of doing things for the community or kind of planting things around the area, helping people out, you know, but also the community providing for the nursery as well is a very big thing for Reggio settings. So I really like that. I'm also a little country bumpkin, so that's probably also why I quite like the little community.
You would have loved it. For me, I think being so London based, because I think it was my second nursery role after being in London. My first one was big chain. So when you're in a chain, every nursery runs very, very similar anyway. So it was my first independent away from the London scene that I went into. And I just remember going, I love this. But as a practitioner working there, you couldn't have your own children there. So it was probably the only reason that I left, because logistics just didn't work for me, and I really wanted my children to experience that forest school environment because of where we live. We don't have forest schools here. So this nursery was 20 minutes away from here. So yeah, I would have loved to have had my children in it.
So how can people find more out about environments? What are some good places to go, things to see, areas to look at? What would you say to kind of explore these things?
I think obviously you've got your typical things that you go to, the internet, Facebook pages and stuff like that. Personally, when I was a practitioner, everything I used was Pinterest. I loved Pinterest. I even use it for my own house outfits a lot.
Pinterest is life.
But my biggest thing that I think everyone should do, and even as an apprentice, I really think this should happen, I try and advocate it with my nurseries, but it doesn't work, is I think people need to experience other nurseries.
100%.
You can be, I've met many apprentices in my life that started in the nursery as an apprentice and they're now the manager and they've never worked at another setting, which is brilliant. That I think that's great that they have that opportunity to start at the bottom, work their way up, show that they've got the skills. But there is nothing better than seeing what someone else does. One, you can go out and go, I do better than you. But two, you can actually go, I love what they're doing, let me bring that in.
Do you know what I really loved was I worked as agency. I did agency for a year, and that was every week you were somewhere different, could have been every day you were working, you were somewhere different. And that took me to so many different places in the same area, again, when we're talking socioeconomic, but I saw, experienced, met some very, very different people and met some very different environments that I went, that's amazing. Why had I never thought of that in my routine? Or why didn't we put that into there? Or that would have been great for that SEND child, you know. And it's just learning all of those different ideas. And like you say, for want for better words, some settings can get stagnant. And you know, you're often pulling out the same resources, you're pulling out the same tough tray ideas. Great. But what more can you do? How can you change that? But I think that's in any creative profession. You want to be furthering yourself that little bit more. So I completely agree with you, Shellie, in kind of going to other settings, even if it's just the one next door. You know, it's not that you've got to go far away, it's just to see how things are slightly different, even if it's a case they bring lunch half an hour earlier, so actually all the children go to sleep a bit better because they're not too tired after lunch, or things like that, isn't it? You know, just changes of that space, that time, that environment that can differ. So do environments change according to trends?
Oh yes. They so do. If you look at Instagram right now and TikTok, there is that lady, isn't there, the nursery nurse?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen her?
Yeah.
The nursery nurse. And I know she doesn't do too much about environment. She's more based on like the parents and the interactions and that kind of stuff, isn't she? But she's a trend. People follow that and look at what it is. And you have got the parents that will come in and things are going on in their lives, the trends change, the things that they do change in their home lives, and they'll come into us and say, this is happening for us, can you sort that out? And we do adapt in the early years to make sure that we plan activities. At a nursery my niece went to, one of the little children went to a spa. She went for a spa day with mummy. And she went into nursery and told the practitioner all about it. The next day, that practitioner had set up a spa in the nursery for 2 to 3-year-olds. Yeah, it was amazing. They had cucumbers on their eyes, they had hair wraps, they had the lot. It was brilliant. My niece came home, told me all about it. She thought it was amazing. But then someone else was moving house. So this practitioner is one of the best people I've ever seen in work ever. And so little girl was moving house. The next day, practitioner's got all the boxes. She's packed up the whole setting and the children got to move it around.
Really nice. And again, it's that fluidity of your environment, isn't it? It's that being able to change that environment for best suiting that child's interests. So instead of just doing this week we're doing aquarium. Why? Don't know, because we just are. But thinking about that, you know, we're doing spa week this week because our children have gone to the spa, and so we're changing the whole space, we're changing everything. It's not just. And again, that's something that some children will never experience in the real world. They will never get to understand what a spa is, even, you know. So to have that curious experience in nursery is boggling to them, is mind-blowing, it's amazing. It's something so new, so exciting. For me, it's the natural materials. So again, we are no longer on fantastic plastic. We're not looking at bright colours. We've got a lot of wooden toys, a lot of open-ended toys. Also a lot of not open-ended toys, like my coffee machine. But, you know, there are the toys. Yeah.
But do you know what? Like my nieces and nephews are between 7. Oh, no, they're not. They're between 10 and 3. And they love a Starbies. One of their favourite things to do is to go to, or they call it Starbs. So their favourite thing to do is go to Starbs. So actually their role play could be that they're going for a Starbucks drive-through. And we didn't have that when we were younger. That was not our trend, was it? Our trend would have been, God knows what our trend would have been in the 80s and 90s.
Argos.
Argos catalogue.
Miniature pencil.
Yeah. But I think those trends, like, I'm all for getting rid of the plastic. I'm all for that. I love curiosity. I absolutely adore loose parts.
Completely.
Yeah,
and I think it's the importance of just promoting that child's imagination. I think for me, the fantastic plastic, this is a mobile phone, here you go, play with it. That will only ever be a mobile phone. Whereas like a wooden block could be anything. There are a gajillion things that wooden block could one day become, in the eye of a child, be anything.
Yeah. Community playthings is a really big thing now. I've been to the village. They make all of the resources in-house. Everything is made in the setting, in the village, sorry. The people, they eat together, they work together, they don't earn a wage, so no one earns a wage from the community. They the money that they get from the resources, which we all know are very expensive, goes back into the community, and it supports everybody. Everything they have is natural, so it's all the wooden toys, the wooden furniture.
Is that where community playthings comes from?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Oh, you should go. They're based in Robertsbridge in Kent. But they actually open themselves up for people to go around and have a look. This was prior to COVID. I don't know how they've changed it. Yeah. So everything is based from wood that they farm. I know they've got much bigger now, and I know they're global now. But yeah, they fell the trees, they make the resources. It's in a workshop. So, but the children learn from there as well. So their environment is all about the natural. They learn to swim in a lake in the middle of the village. And it's just amazing. Their resources and what they use. I'm a big advocate. When I got to go there, I got to make a truck, and I got to bring the truck home. So I was really excited about that. And they have the best cookies. They will greet you with warm chocolate chip cookies.
That has genuinely blown me away.
That's it.
having worked in a multitude of settings that use all of the community playthings stuff. Yeah. I never knew that as their background.
Yeah. So it's really nice. The children learn from it. Like, they have a school that's on the village as well. Then you never know, the things might have changed slightly since I went. Probably a good 10 years ago at least that I went there. No, even more than that, probably about 15 years ago. But when I went about 15 years ago, that's the way it worked. So even like the environment that the children there had was that beautiful natural environment. They learn outdoors, they do everything outdoors. It was lovely.
So can we change our environments to make them more appropriate for SEND or for specific needs of children?
Absolutely. Yeah. The way that environments historically have been set up is every child will fit to this one environment, but it's not the case anymore. So many settings have got things like their sensory rooms. Setting I visited Monday this week is in a converted soft play area.
Ooh.
It's not got most of the soft play now, but it kept the baby soft play, which is somewhere I used to take my children a lot when they were little. And so they've got somewhere that they can take the children. So those children that are having meltdowns because the room is too much for them, they can go there and regulate. I couldn't remember the word then. Regulate themselves a little bit. But things like as well, if you've got a child who is in a wheelchair, we can adapt our environment to support that. Things can be moved, the layout can be sorted to make sure that that child can move around as freely as their able-bodied peers. Like if we go back to community playthings and many other companies, but these are the ones that I know, they've got the tables that you can extend and you can lower as well. So we can change those to make sure the child can sit under the table with their peers as well. And things like high chairs, if you've got a child who is unable to sit in a chair unaided, we can bring those in, can't we, for them to be able to sit with their peers at the table. It's not, oh, he's got a need, he needs to sit over there now on his own. They can actually join each other now, and the segregation's gone. It's less of making the child fit for the environment now, and it's more making the environment fit for the child.
Again, I think often you think of large things like that as well, furniture changes, yes, 100%. But actually it can just be that you are making that environment accessible. Like you said, is it different between nature, nurture? Is there boys, girls? You know, is it accessible for all of that as well for the children? Is there enough resources available for both sexes as well, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. We can't just go, oh no, we are in a gender neutral world, because not every child wants to do that.
No.
There are the little girls that still want to wear that princess dress,
Yeah.
and little boys that want to wear that princess dress, to
Yeah.
be fair.
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure that we're still catering for that, and we've got the hammers and the tools, and if you're a brave enough setting, actually having those real resources like the proper saws and the wood and stuff like that. Obviously the children are going to be fully supervised, but we can adapt that and make sure the environment suits that.
So Shellie, as you've been on with us before, we wanted to ask you a slightly different question. What was that one moment that you went, I want to go into early years?
So the biggest thing, I've always wanted to do it. Even when I was at secondary school, I remember teachers saying to me, like, what do you want to do? And I said early years, and my teacher was like, no, you can't do that, your brains are too big for early years. And that really wound me up, because what are you trying to say, that anyone that works in early years is stupid? That's not the case. I know some of the most intelligent people that I know work in this background.
You can name drop me, Shellie, it's all right.
Gemma and Ellen are obviously two of those. But I remember my teacher saying it to me, when you should be a nurse. Like, why? Why would I want to do that? Like, I don't want to do that. But I'm the oldest of 3 children, and I've got aunties and uncles that are just slightly older than me. But my nan had a life experience twice. So I had cousins then, that I was 11 when one of my cousins was born, and I remember just falling in love with this little baby, and everything that I did, I wanted to do for him. I lived at my nan's. No, I didn't live at my nan's. It was summer holidays, and I decided I was living at my nan's. So I just said, Mum, I'm off, bye. And my auntie still lived at my nan's at the time. And I spent all the time just playing with this baby. I would change him, I would feed him, I would do everything. When they moved house, I moved house with them to like get my auntie set. I was 11 years old, but I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I think from then, this cousin of mine is, I want to say he's like 23 now or something like that. But I had the passion from when he was a baby, and he's now having his own babies. So yeah, I've always loved it. I did my work experience in a school, and then came out and was like, this is what I want to do. And I've always just had that like maternal side to me that I've always loved.
What an amazing answer. We always say it's a vocation, and it's something that you can either do or you can't really teach it. It's something in you. It just absolutely proves it.
Yeah,
it gets me cross when schools do what they've done to you, Shellie, and I hear it so often with people that they go, oh, you don't want to do that, or oh, what would you want to do that for? Oh, you should do this, you should do this.
Yeah,
somebody's got that innate desire, follow that passion. That's an incredible story.
No, I do think without people like us starting with the children at the very start, you look, all the world leaders guarantee they had some sort of childcare when they were little. I guarantee there is someone out there to blame for Donald Trump.
I was going to say,
it's not always the best thing. But if you look, like where I've been in early years for like as long as I have, one of the lads that I used to look after went to Cambridge and went to uni at Cambridge and ended up being a rower. So, you know, like you have the rowing, the televised rowing thing. He was one of them. One of the little boys I used to look after is now a published author. His mum's a really good author, published, like, you know, one of those that sells millions around the world. And during lockdown, he wrote a book, and I've obviously got a copy of it, because as soon as his mum put on Facebook that he was doing it, I was like, right, first in the list. But it's really nice to see now those children that I started looking after 21 years ago. So the preschoolers, they're like 25, 26 now. And seeing them grow into humans that are trying to change the world. That's that without us, they wouldn't have that first 5 years. Like Princess Kate came out, didn't she, and said that then she's doing the campaign for that first 5 years and how important the first 1,000 days are. We are that first 1,000 days.
Absolutely.
So anyone listening needs to remember how important they are.
100%.
And the job that we're doing is not just
the
a job.
Impact.
No way. It's hugely impactful.
Yeah, definitely.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Shellie, and thank you everybody for tuning in today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the topics we've covered. So if you've got any questions that you would like us to answer on what we've discussed, please do get in touch. Your input really does help shape our conversations.
So don't forget to like, share and follow this podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation going about early years. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.